So I am so thrilled to bring this next guest to the Rail Talk studio, the rider of presumptive champion, Sovereignty, Kentucky Derby winning rider, and winner of over 2,200 races, Junior Alvarado. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Yo. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you. I'm so glad that you worked this into your schedule. I always forget how busy jockeys are. I'm like, well, Saratoga meets over. He'll have some time off. And then you're like, no, I'm going out to Kentucky Downs actually to ride. So thanks for fitting us in.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember when you tried to get a hold, but like Saratoga, just crazy. There is no day off in the mornings, and the afternoon you're riding. When you're not riding, we try to do something with the family. But it is fun time there in Saratoga.
Yeah, hardest working people in the business. You guys and the backstretch workers and the trainers, everybody really works hard, but you guys work super hard. All right, let's talk about the big horse. Let's talk about Sovereignty. Obviously, he's been, I assume, a life-changing horse for you. You got the Kentucky Derby win. Can you tell me a little bit about what makes him special and what makes you guys work together so well? Like, obviously, he's super fast and talented, but what is it about him and your relationship that has been so successful?
I think for the most part, I think because I work a lot with Billy Moore and I work a lot with the babies. I help him to develop. He does what he does, but when I get on the horses, I do what what he's not able to do. So trying to help him on the horses, try to understand the horse and give the feedback. And I just think that for that reason, not only work with this horse, but he worked with so many other horses that are right for Bill Mudd. But I remember when I wrote it the second time. The first time, they were all happy, but I am saying like, look, I don't want to, get all hyped up. Let me just write it one more time, second time, and see where we are. We were hoping he was gonna win, but I remember we finished second that day, going first time out going a mile, and he ran very well. We finished a good second, and I remember calling Bill and telling Bill, I think uh, all the 2-year-old that I ever ride for you, this is the best one so far. Like it's not even close. I think he has a lot of talent. Like the gallop out after the race, it wasn't even normal gallop out. He was like running through it in the gallop out. So, I was very excited with the horse. And, I think, he probably saw what I saw. He probably knew that maybe even before they meet. And that's when he entered in the street sense the second time out, the third time out, which I was kind of like worried because I was saying, oh, maybe I say too much. He's putting in a mistake race before even he break his maiden. That's not like Billy Mudd. But I just think it's a very smart horse. It's a horse that at the beginning we knew he got the talent. We knew that he was still far back from what he could show us. And even at the beginning of the year, we won the Fontaine of Youth. That horse, it was probably 70%. So, like I said, we knew the horseshoe was just getting better and better and getting faster. And like I said, I don't think Billy had it into a training program yet because he has so much talent that he didn't need to do any much with him. And I think eventually that happened when we were heading into the Kentucky Derby. He got into a training. I remember seeing him in Churchill Downs training, and I was like, wow, this horse has never done nothing like that in the morning because I've seen it. I've seen him train, I've seen galloping, and this is not the horse that I know. And it was in a positive move, and like I said, I mean, he's just very smart horse and very easy to ride. Like I think right now he understands his job much better than by the time that we were in the Derby. Not right now he breaks and put himself right there close to the pace, and it makes my job definitely more easy.
The other thing about him that I have observed is he's one of those rare horses that seems to get better as the distances go longer and doesn't seem to get really tired. He just struts his stuff more and more. Have you ever ridden a horse like that who you just felt like could run all day no matter what you asked of him?
I think the closest one might be probably Olympia. He was very good, but I think, as a treat, like, he was older horse already. I think he kind of already knew what to do at that point. I think this guy, he's very good at mile and eight, which I think a lot of horses can be still good at mile and eight, but a mile and a quarter, he's still that good, or maybe it could be even a little better, which other horses probably don't get that little extra eighth of a mile. And I just think for him, he enjoys it. That's, the same way than he's just fat though.
Yeah, I was thinking like if the Belmont were a mile and a half, he might have won by even more because he just seems like there's no bottom to him really. Let's take you back to the Derby ride. I thought it was a terrific ride. I thought you moved exactly when you had to, but how did the actual ride kind of line up with the plan going into the race? Like, was that the time you wanted to move, or did you see other horses coming back? Like, how did you decide when to make your move in the Derby?
I think, like instruction wise, it was not instruction. Bill Moss said to me, I remember saying it earlier in the week, it's like one thing. It's like you're breaking on the outside. We can both go wide both turns. You go wide both turns, we might as well stay at home. So I had that in mind, like, oh boy, I gotta save ground at some point, and either the first turn and the second turn. More easy probably in the first turn, since the second turn everybody get piled up. So,
Right.
and coming with a closer, you don't want to come through the rail, because that only has been done with
Calvin Burrell is the
Calvin
only one.
Borrell. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I wasn't gonna pull it out, try to pull that. But
Yeah.
I think, coming into the first turn, I think everything was just beautifully. I got to say ground. Then, when we turn the backside, I get to see kind of Baez in front of me, like length and a half in front of me. And then I see maybe 2, 3 lanes in front of Baez, 2, 3 lanes in front of me was journalism. And, I can feel that Baez start to making a move. And then he kind of tucked him back again, which was a little strange for me. And then I ended up seeing in front of me journalism passing the 5 pole. And that's when I said, like, let me just get right, because he's in the clear path. He's in the outside. He's gonna make his move whenever he wants. I just want to make sure I'm right by the hips. I don't want him to get away from me. And that's what I did. I just put myself right there, and right when we get a little before the half a mile, he started picking it up, and I'm just kind of like creeping in right behind him, and making my move kind of quietly behind him, and right turning for home. I put my horse in the outside. He takes a good 16 of a mile. You start kind of riding and riding and riding, trying to get it into the rhythm, and once he gets that first 16 of a mile, then he has that good explosion finish, and tipping him the outside, and like I said before, we hit the 8 pole. Like I could feel like everything starts slowing down. I knew I was about to win the Kentucky Derby.
What an unbelievable feeling. And that's leads into my next question. Like, obviously the adrenaline rush has got to be crazy, but then like once you calm down a little bit, who were some of the first people that you think of, that maybe that helped you along the way get to this point? Who were some of the first folks that came into your mind after, the high of winning the Derby came down a little bit?
No, it was just my family. That I was just like, I think right when I passed away, I thank God for the first thing I did. But then, I just was thinking like, we were, my wife, we were my kids watching me, like, like I just wanted to see their faces, like we just won the Kentucky Derby. I want to see their expression, because like I said, they knew it was my dream, but actually it was their dream too. And they know that the work that we've been putting for over probably 20 years to try to get somewhere close here. And yeah, they were the first one that that kind of come to my mind. Then like I said, and that process and the gallop out, there's so many things that start rushing through your head, like a lot of ups and downs, a lot of people that help you, a lot of obstacle, a lot of bumps that you go through your career, and that's what I think it makes it so special. Because, like I said, I was very fortunate to 2 years ago win the Saudi Cup, the biggest race money wise, but feeling wise, it wasn't even close. The Kentucky Derby just bring you so many good feelings. It's just something like I said, I still can describe what the whole feeling.
Yeah. It kind of seems like you're still pinching yourself about
Yeah,
it, which
absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, and you're doing a great job leading me into my next questions, because you talked about the obstacles and the bumps in the road. I feel like you're a guy who's been a little bit unlucky with injuries along the way, and you did get hurt earlier this spring. And the first thing I thought was like, oh my God, like is Junior not going to be able to ride this horse in the Derby? Can you talk a little bit about the kind of the fortitude it takes and the mental strength it takes to keep bouncing back from those injuries and get back on in such a difficult and dangerous sport?
Yeah, no, it's very hard. And I think, physically, I don't physically, I think it's easy. We recover quick. We're very lucky at that point. I just think it's just mentally, it hits you mentally, it sets you back mentally. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we normally have to face when we have an injury, and then you come back, you feel 100%, but then people still have doubts. It doesn't matter how long you've been riding, it doesn't matter how many wins you have in your career. You get back to riding, and it seems like you have to prove yourself again, from almost from zero to like to where you can get again to where you were, to your peak. And um sometimes it doesn't go that easy. It takes a little time for whatever reason sometime, and that's when you get a little frustrated, then you start double guessing yourself and things like that. And I think for me, I've been in that position so many times throughout my career. But I think just having a good home, a good family that still help you through it. It give you an ease when you're at home. It definitely help you go the next day and keep trying and the next day and then the next day, but I think that's, for most of the jockeys, I think that's the big problem. It's not actually physically, you recover quick, you do whatever you need to do. It's just more the mental part, to be strong and get back again to your 100% of the game.
Yeah, no, 100%. You've done a great job bouncing back from all those injuries and made the Kentucky Derby, I think, even more well deserved. I'll take you back a little bit, back to your days riding at Arlington Park, because I remember watching you back then, and you were winning meets left and right, and we all miss Arlington Park, first of all. But it just always seemed to me like you were destined to ride on the bigger stage. But that had to be a really tough leap to make. When you came over to New York, what made you make that jump, and what made you feel like, okay, now's the time where I'm going to go, ride with the best colony in America?
I was in. I remember when I moved from Florida to Chicago. I started riding in Chicago. My first year, I did pretty good, and the second year, I think that's when I finished second in the standing. And I always was looking like, I thought like, Arlington at that time in the summer. I think it was Saratoga, Del Mar, and I felt like Arlington was almost like the third biggest track in the summer at that time. So I said, if I can get to be top leading jockey here for a few years, I think, a lot of people will see me, and then I can probably make my move either to California, to New York. I felt always more New York because I felt like most of the good horses always were in New York, in Saratoga in the summer. And, you know, I remember one year, I think it was maybe 2010 or 2011. I got a horse. I was 2010. I got a horse to ride in Saratoga from Arlington, from Chicago. Went to Saratoga, rode a race. The horse was, I think it was second favorite, something like that. But I felt so out of place riding in Saratoga with all those big jockeys. I was like, oh, let me step back a little bit. It's like I thought I was ready. I thought mentally, like I wanted it so bad, and so like this is gonna be my opportunity, and then am I gonna stay? And no, I wasn't even close. I said like, wow. I mean, those guys are on another level, and at that point I was leading jockey in Chicago, but riding with those guys in one race, all of them together, I said like, yeah, I'm not ready yet for this, and like I said, I had to regroup, went back to Chicago, keep riding in Chicago. And I think 2011, I said like, let me just start going in the winter, which is like, it's a little easy. A lot of the big jockeys are go to Florida. Let me start trying that, and I did that. And by the time the spring come, I came back to Chicago. Then for 2012, that's when I was thinking, it's like, well, am I gonna try again the winter? For my actually, I was talking to Eric Reed, which was the trainer who helped me to find the agent that I'm still working with, Mike Salito, and he says to me, yeah, you can come here. And I went in the winter, we did pretty good. And then I remember I was planning to come back to Chicago, and he said like, no, you have to stay here. It's like, you go back to Chicago, we're not working more together. It's like, you have to, you're the caliber for these jockeys here, but you need to stick it up. Those guys are gonna come back from Florida, and it's gonna be tough. But it's like, this is like, you cannot go back to Chicago. You have to stick here and like tough it off. And I ended up doing that, and many
The
many
rest is
many years
history.
later, we're here.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I always say like anybody that can stick it out riding at Aqueduct in the winter is a tough guy and deserves to make it in New York. I think of other guys like, Dylan Davis and Kendrick, guys that have stuck around in the winter and gained business in the spring and the summer because of that. So yeah, that's a great point, a great stepping stone. You mentioned your agent, Mike Salito. Obviously you guys have had a great long-standing relationship. Is there anybody else that kind of like took you under their wing when you first started riding, that kind of like, maybe showed you the ropes or gave you some advice along the way? Or there's anybody else that kind of coached you to get to the point you're at now?
No, I think you just working with Mike a little, and with Billy Moore at the same time. Always was that help. I remember, my first probably 4 or 5 years. I never got to ride the big horses for Mr. Mott, but it was very still important to ride the daily basis horses for them, and I got I made a good friendship with Javier Castellano and Ramon Dominguez, and I think I was watching Ramon a lot. He was kind of like the king and Aqueduct, and I think I learned a lot from him to what to do, kind of what to keep doing every year after that, and but yeah, I mean, I just think my agent was very, my agent had very great jockeys before. He used to have the Sormo when he was at the peak. Richard McCleary, Jose Santos. So he kind of, he was guiding me and kind of tell me, what we're supposed to be doing every time. When we used to go somewhere else and ride big horses, Bill likes to do this, you try to do this. And he did kind of guide me a lot, at the beginning.
Got it. I want to go back to one other special horse that you rode in a really special journey, and that's Cody's Wish. Obviously it was a horse that gained a lot of attention because it's a story behind it, and Cody Dorman. How much did you feel that along the way? Did you feel like any kind of extra, I don't want to say pressure, but did you feel any kind of extra weight going into those races with Cody's Wish, knowing like the entire world was rooting for this horse?
Yes, that's been a whole different thing for me, and it's funny because I was uh, mentally I wasn't good at that point. I remember I just come out from a couple like head injuries, and I was moving to Florida, and then this horse was open the Derby week, Derby day, and Belmont. So I got to went to Belmont and ride the horse, and since then, I pick up the mount. But I think it wasn't too much of a pressure at the beginning, and then I think after the forego, that's when everything started clicking. Then I can see there was a big, everybody like paying attention more and more and more, and yeah, it turned to a different pressure. It was not the regular pressure you get every day or the anxious. It just was something different, and like I said, like every time I see the entries, where I felt like, okay, this is the last workout for the horse. The horse gonna go run next week, and like I almost felt like I didn't even have appetite the whole week when I was leading into the race.
Wow.
It's just like a lot of pressure. I'm tired looking at the races, like what can I do so I don't mess this up? Like because everybody's watching. People they know the business, people that don't know, people that are very related with horse racing, and they're not. They're all looking at this horse and I always felt like, if I messed that up, I'm gonna look like the villain of the story. So, it was just a lot in my head. Definitely, it was a lot of pressure. And same thing, I all those races that we won together. I did enjoy it, but I felt like it was more for them than it was like a winning for me. I didn't get to enjoy it to that level. It was very satisfying to get the win for sure, but at that point it felt was something that we were just given to somebody else. It was more for them at that moment, and it was just a whole different experience like I never felt before. I rode so many great ones, win so many great ones, and any different lower races claiming and everything, and this was has been like a unique whole different experience for me for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it was bigger than you. It was bigger than the horse. It was bigger than all of us, and I think that that's what made it so special. All right, last question from me. I know you got to be careful here because you ride with some of these guys every single day. But the big story of the week was the Jockey Club Gold Cup and the Irad falling off the horse. You weren't in the race, so I'm curious. Just from an outsider's perspective, what was your impression of that? Obviously, the athleticism from Irad trying to stay on the horse was incredible. But when you saw that, what was your first reaction?
Yeah, it's just you don't want nothing like that ever to happen. But it's like I said, but especially in a big race like this, you want to make sure everybody gets out of there and do their best with their horses, get the best chance to see who is the really best horse in the race. And when that happened, I was like, oh no, I couldn't really tell right away who was it. I could see from the side shot that, Kendrick pull his horse in right away at the beginning, but at some point I never felt he had contact with Dylan neither. So then, when you watch that head on, you can see a little bit more of what happened. It's that, Kendrick comes in very aggressively. He never got to Dylan, but if you're in Dylan's position, you kind of like, whoa,
Right.
going away from him because like he's coming so aggressively, he's gonna knock me off the horse. And at the same time, Dylan probably not gonna say he wasn't aware. You was just like, at the moment you don't get to think too many things. You have to react. That's the thing. A lot of people don't understand in the business. When you're riding horses, it's not, oh, he did this. We don't have time to think many times. You react. And I think that's when Dylan did it, and he ended up kind of putting a little more pressure in the horses inside, and sadly that happened. Thank God, Irad Ortiz, he's good. He came the next day with him in the judge room. He was very good. That, like I say, people don't understand how athletic we are. Like we were really unbelievable. It was crazy how he was in one horse. He's still trying to pull his horse. And I was like, "What you get?" It's like I was unlucky that I was holding to the inside rein, because if I would be holding the outside rein, I would have pull it toward me, and I would have might be able to get on. It's crazy when I'm talking to him. It's like you still were thinking try to get on the horse when I'm like at that point I might
I
be
know.
just thinking how am I gonna land right now, because
Right.
I'm off the horse already. But that's the adrenaline. That's everything goes through your head. You don't want to touch the ground. That's the main thing. When you're on a horse, you try to reach for everything you can to try to stay in the horse. And same thing for Edgar Sayas. I mean, he was like probably three-quarters of the horse too, and then he came back and pull himself on it. Yeah, it was a little bit of a crazy race. It just a little unfortunate that we didn't get to see. I wanted to see Mindframe because I think he's one of those main contenders and the class again. I would have loved to see him run, with a clear shot to see where we're standing with him.
Yeah, no, it's a great analysis of it. And yeah, I feel like if Irad had been able to get back on that horse, that would have been one of the most athletic things in the history of the world right there. But thankfully, everybody was okay. Nobody got seriously injured. Junior Alvarado, man, I can always tell you're a great guy, a great jockey. And now I know that you're a great interview. Thank you so much for the time, brother. This was fun.
No, thanks, Jordan. And like I said, sorry about it. We've been trying to get this to work, but it's been a lot of work.
Yeah, no doubt. No apology necessary. Thanks for making the time, man.
Absolutely. Thank you.